Very good morning from India, South Asian Forum for Environment, and I am Dr. Dipayan Dey, the Chair and Founder Trustee of South Asian Forum for Environment. It's a pleasure presenting my project that was supported by Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research in this steering committee meeting, the 58th steering committee meeting. So I will take you across my project and give a brief glimpse of what we got and what we envisage out of this project outcomes. Titled as Building Capacities Among AP-PLAT Partners in the Science of Pricing Ecosystem Services for Enabling Ecosystem-Based Adaptation for a Sustainable Future. Now the point is, whenever we talk about ecosystem services, the first thing comes in everybody's mind that what exactly is this? Now, if an ecosystem is a dynamic complex of plant, animal and microorganism communities and the non-living environment interaction, it acts as a functional unit. Now, this functional unit provides a number of services, of which we have identified main 4 services. One is the provisioning service, second, the regulating service, third, supporting service, and fourth, cultural service. Now, when we say provisioning service, it actually means about provisioning lots of goods and services to the communities who are dependent on that particular ecosystem. But there are some invisible, intangible services. These are called the regulating service. Say, for example, climate change control mechanisms or climate regulations or say water regulations. So these are not visible, but this facilitates the life and livelihood of the people who stay or who are dependent on that particular ecosystem. And these are supported by certain systems, and definitely for every ecosystem there are certain aesthetic services or cultural services which are very important for the people, as we find it in the socio-ecological landscapes, what in Japan we call as the Satoyama. So this Satoyama is basically a system that is dependent on the supporting and cultural services of particular ecosystems. Now, once these systems, the services are lost, the whole benefit of the ecosystem is taken down, and it degrades the ecosystem itself along with the life and livelihood of people. So what we thought is that if we can understand the economic value of these ecosystem services, then we can definitely add these services as a matter of our gross domestic product or GDP, and then we can also put value of a fiscal type to the ecosystem services. That is very important for accounting the environmental aspects of a nation. So with that particular mission, we wanted to understand these services. So some of these services we will discuss in the next slide. So this is just the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment outcome, where certain ecosystems have been identified that has its goods and services. It starts from mountain and polar to forest and woodlands, inland waters, dry lands, cultivated lands like agricultural fields, even urban parks and gardens, coastal areas, islands, and definitely the marine ecosystem. So now we come to the next slide, where we understand what are these services. Ecosystem services, as we said, can be divided into 4 types: provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural. I have given certain examples of each of these services here, and this will further clarify our understanding or help us to understand that what are the differences between these services. So in this particular slide, ecosystem services, we just provide the different categories or types of the services that we have, that is provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural. So these examples will further help us to understand that what are these services about and how we define these services. We also classify ecosystem services with an economic perspective. Now, why we do that? Because when we go for pricing or valuation of the ecosystem services, we need to know what is the economic benefit or use value of it. So definitely we take it as use value and the non-use value. Now, under the use value, we find the direct use value, like the direct market value of natural products, and indirect use values, that is value derived from ecosystem services, for example, the flood control. So this flood control, if the ecosystem doesn't do, then we need to invest some money to do it. Now that money is the value of the service that we get from the ecosystem. There are certain option values which are in between the use and the non-use values. This value is the future potential of a complete healthy environment, like the biodiversity that we get. Now biodiversity has got an economic perspective, biodiversity has got a direct use, biodiversity at times has got a non-use value also. Like the say primordial soup, which we always try to find from Antarctica. These are certain genetic resources which are lying idle. We need to know them, and that is the ecosystem service that we get from the option values. Now, legacy and altruistic value is the value of leaving the environment intact for future generation. Like this is where we talk about sustainable development, sustaining the values of the ecosystem for the future generations to come. And lastly, the intrinsic value, that is the beauty of the nature. Even the beauty of the nature, we go for tourism, we go to see a lot of beautiful places on earth. So this has got an economic implication. So that beauty of nature is taken as the intrinsic value. Now in our project, the first objective that we had is to quantify the economic advantages, evaluate societal dimensions, and as well assess the potential risk of monetizing these ecosystem services. Secondly, what we wanted to do is to acquaint the latest scientific and economic approaches of defining, evaluating, and pricing ecosystem services in the Asian context. Because this is somewhat a place-based approach, which is very much important as per the mandates of Asia-Pacific Network's work. And lastly, the third objective was to develop and validate appropriate framework for incorporating ecosystem services pricing system in ecosystem-based approach. Now, whenever we are talking about sustainable development, whenever we are talking about the nationally determined commitments for climate change, for combating climate change, the main important approach that is coming is ecosystem-based approach or nature-based approach, and for that, validating and pricing these ecosystem services is very, very important, and that needs to be done through participatory action research. Now, how did we do it? What we have done in our methodology, I will simplify it here. We take this table, this table means the table of the ecosystem services to the field in 3 different places, of which one is East Kolkata wetland in India, another is the Tangor Haur wetland in Bangladesh, and the third one is the Monkey's Chick wetland in Thailand. So in these 3 wetlands, we took these different categories of ecosystem services to validate and verify with the stakeholders. Now when I say stakeholders, I want to mean the line managers, the line departments, like the irrigation, say the agriculture, the say conservation department, urban planners, all these line departments were our stakeholders, and we try to find out how many ecosystem services we are dealing with, what are their specific indicators, how do we identify it, talk to the users, whether they recognize it or value it, how do they value it, and then talk to the stockholders or the policy practitioners to include their views, whether they think that these are valuable ecosystem services or not. Then re-evaluate say the ecosystem services for pricing, and we use pricing methodologies. There are different methodologies for pricing, we'll see it in the next slide. And once this pricing is tried out, then we compare that which say a particular system is giving us a better price. So that is how we compare and compile, and that has come out as a peer reviewed say a publication which is under review now for future references. So we go to the next slide for further details. This is about selecting a pricing system. There are several pricing systems like the market price method, the productivity. I have given in brief, I have given the details of each of it. Hedonic price method, travel cost method, opportunity cost method, contingent valuation method, benefit transfer method. But we need to select one or two out of this, like say market price method can be one, opportunity cost method can be one, or say contingent valuation method can be one, which are from the literature survey, which we found that mostly used and very precise. So we selected such type of pricing systems for this say ecosystem service valuation and pricing, and we also developed capacities in the stakeholders that how to use this pricing system for further evaluation or pricing of the ecosystem services. The Thailand experience was on the Monkey's Chick. Monkey's Chick is basically a man-made wetland that can store the extra flood water in the time when it is a monsoon period or when there is torrential rain and there is a chance of flood. So this is basically flood mitigation method, and this flood mitigation is done by digging up or developing certain storehouse of water which they call as the monkey's chick. Now sometimes the monkeys, they eat food and store it in their chick. So this food is basically stored because when they again feel hungry, they use that. So that's what is the concept, that whenever there is a shortage of water, they can again use this, and this is how it develops an ecosystem service. So these reservoirs also provide tourism, also provide fisheries and lot of other ecosystem services for the inhabitants. We did the field study and stakeholder meetings in Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand, and Professor Joyashree Roy, which is an eminent environmental economist, was a part of our team. And we visited Monkey's Chick, we talked to the local researchers, we talked with the local stakeholders, and then we found that yes, it has got a wonderful say ecosystem service mechanism which is being developed, and we saw the maps and other details of the Monkey's Chick. So in the next slide we will discuss about our findings. So this is basically a infograph on the experience that we got from the flood resilient structure called the Monkey's Chick. Now what happens is the flood risk reduction spatial management system is developed by the urban planners, and then they see the land use management planning from the spatial plan, that how the land use can be changed for developing Monkey's Chick, and from that they design the location of the Monkey's Chick for the flood resilience of the city. Now out of this structural change, what we get is the prevention and mitigation of the local people, their preparedness about disaster like flood, and the recovery responses. So these are some of the values that we get out of these structures. And also definitely the area is assessed for economic benefits, and then it is mainstreamed for further planning and application in that particular area. So with that, in the next slide we will discuss about the outcomes that we got from studying this. Now this is where we come to the Bangladesh experience of Tangor Haur. Now this Tangor Haur is a very interesting wetland which is also a flood based or flood prone area. The entire river waters from Meghalaya enters Bangladesh, and the torrential rain in Meghalaya, which is a state of India, the torrential rains in Meghalaya causes a severe flood in this Tangor Haur. But interestingly, the different ecosystem services that develops in this Tangor Haur sustains the life and livelihood of these wetlanders. Now we calculated the values of the ecosystem services. We are really grateful that we got a good lot of support from the Agricultural University of Bangladesh, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Agricultural University, and Professor Giyasuddin Mia. He directed and he guided us a lot in developing this particular project. So when we calculated, we found that annually it comes to almost 17.4 million Bangladesh taka as the value of these ecosystem services, which is immense, which is a very amazing value, and this needs to be conserved as a very precious wetland just based on this value. So this is a very important finding that we got, and also in the next slide I will show you something more important and more interesting. So this is a picture of the stakeholder workshop that we have done in Bangladesh in Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Agricultural University, where I think most of the stakeholders were present, and they brainstormed interestingly on the pricing and valuation of this method. So fishing is a very important activity in that Haur area. Cultivation of rice, conservation of lot of local rice varieties. So these are immense significant activities that are being done in these wetlands. So after Thailand, Bangladesh, and now we come to India, where we find the East Kolkata wetland. East Kolkata wetland is a renowned Ramsar site, which is basically identified as a Ramsar site just because of its ecosystem services. Every day, this particular wetland recycles 980 million liters of city's sewerage and converts it into a production system where we get agriculture and fish through nature-based farming practice. Now this wetland has got enormous number of ecosystem services, but the pressure on these wetlands, the urban pressure on the wetland, is gradually making this wetland to shrink, and that is a matter of concern. So when we talk about these ecosystem services and when we say that this is the immense fiscal potential of this ecosystem, this is the financial economic advantage of this ecosystem, I think that brings a very interesting and very strong policy implication from our scientific research, that how these wetlands can be preserved. And International Water Management Institute has carried out a study on this and has developed policy papers to reclaim, conserve and preserve this pristine East Kolkata wetland. So I have a geospatial map presented here. The left one is November 2000 and the right one is the November 2020. So you can see the blue areas shrinking so fast at the rate of almost 3% per annum, and very soon we are going to lose this precious wetland. So ecosystem service pricing is one way of conserving these wetlands, and that is what we did in our studies. So this is a participatory valuation method, what we say as perception based study of the ecosystem service that we had done in East Kolkata wetland, and a fishing trawler that catches fish and brings it to the market is also portrayed here. So this is our experience from the Kolkata peri-urban wetlands. So I have given the dependency on major ecosystem services in peri-urban wetlands over here. Water for domestic use, 84% people are dependent on that. For handicraft, it is just 3.5%. Users do not value the regulatory service. The entire city of Kolkata can survive without a flood just because of these wetlands, just because of the regulatory nature of these wetlands. But unfortunately, this is not valued either by the stakeholders or by the wetlanders who depend on these wetlands, because it is not visible. So here the pricing becomes very important. 75% of the respondent depends on the services sustaining aquaculture. The sample pricing in ecosystem service, what we found is 4 marketable goods generating in ecosystem, East Kolkata wetland from its ecosystem service are priced. These are fish, domestic water, water hyacinth, which is a water weed, and ecotourism. These ecosystem services were priced. 3 methods are compared, that is a contingency valuation method, market valuation method, and opportunity cost method, MVM, OCM and CVM. So with this we compared the pricing, and the price variances depend upon marketability, accessibility and perception. So this is a simple example that how the ecosystem price, ecosystem service price changes with methods and with scenarios, and that is what we have shown here in this slide. This is basically understanding like what are the provisioning, supporting, regulatory and cultural services identified in all these 3 wetlands that we have studied. So what we present here is a heat map. The color index, you can see the more importantly or significantly identified service is having a darker color, and least one is lighter in color. For example, the provisioning service of having genetic resources are not taken into consideration by the stakeholders, and these lie at the lowest level of recognition. Whereas the fish and the aqua products are the most importantly identified services that we get from these 3 wetlands. So in this way, when we calibrate it in a perception based survey, which is a Likert scale, modified Likert scale of 10 points, we survey this following that particular scale and then take a statistical calculation on that to get these numbers, and then we compare the 3 wetlands for the recognition or the priorities in perception of recognizing the ecosystem services in these 3 wetlands. So finally, the major outcomes and learnings that we have from this particular project is perception based valuation, and therefore pricing as well are place based and varies with the ecosystems. So it cannot be a thumb rule, or it cannot be a single value system. It has to be place based. Pricing methods would depend on availability of data and information of that particular place. Sorry. Pricing approach has to be scientific, unique and universal to ensure equity and reciprocity. Here, participatory action research is very important, and the stakeholders as well as the users both need to comply with the system as well participate in the system of valuation and pricing. Demands extensive research and policy implication. It demands extensive research and policy implication, because once these prices are done, this should be recognized and implemented in the policy planning system. This is where we need a lot of publications, and we have done a lot of meetings with the journalists also, so that these things can come up in the public portal, in the newspaper, in the social media, and it has got a very brilliant impact in the entire stakeholders as well as the users of these wetlands. And lastly, this is highly significant in the climate milieu, especially to address damage and loss. So whenever we are doing damage and loss financing, carbon financing, we always ignore the ecosystem service value of a particular ecosystem. There are several policies or several schemes or several paradigms of conservation coming up. One is the REDD plus in the forest area. One that South Asian Forum for Environment has recommended is the biorights in wetland conservation, where the ecosystem service prices and the valuation of the ecosystem services are very significantly endorsed and incorporated in the system of conservation. Like payment for ecosystem services is a major factor or a driver in right-based conservation that has been implemented by the biorights project of SAFE. So these are our major learnings, and we have shared these learnings with the stakeholders. We have got their feedback and we have incorporated it into a system where they can come and learn, and this has developed a system of continuous capacity building through web-based training, and we have launched a website where people can enroll and they can get trained on this system of pricing, and people are coming to us to understand what exactly it is and how this can help in planning in the urban context, planning in the climate milieu, in the climate context, as well planning for the urban poor who are mostly dependent on the ecosystem services of the ecosystems they stay in. A final finding that I would like to share is value is a perception, but when we talk about price, this is the economic estimate. Value can be very much variable. It changes from place to place. But when we talk about price, it has to have a particular economic tag in it. And that is what we wanted to do in this particular research. Different types of changes may affect different groups of people, which influences the choice of valuation method. So valuation methods also cannot be very universal, but it needs to be place-based. And what is very important is willingness to accept the compensation and willingness to pay. How much a user or a stakeholder is willing to accept as a compensation or to accept to pay for the ecosystem service. So these are some of the very nitty-gritties of this particular valuation method, and we have given it in detail, and I have shared the website address. So I would really like to thank the Secretariat and the organizers for giving this wonderful opportunity. It's a pleasure to present this particular research paper, which was supported by Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research. And definitely at the end of this, I would humbly request you to see a small video, very small though, on the ecosystem services of East Kolkata wetland. That will help us to understand better what ecosystem services are. So with that, I would conclude my talk. Thank you very much. Arigato gozaimasu.
Wise use of wetlands is a vision for managing subtle wetland ecosystems. It recognizes interdependence between wetland and its people. It calls for a balanced and pragmatic approach to stop and reverse the loss of wetlands worldwide. Worldwide map for the minimal spread of wetlands as against the maximal spread shows us the estimated loss. Only few stretches, as shown here in green, are wetlands of permanent nature. In the milieu of climate change, future trade-offs between conservation and development needs are addressed in this vision. It's time to adopt wise use. It's time to save the precious wetlands. Urban wetlands are lifelines to urban poor. ecosystem services of these wetlands sustain their livelihood. Herein, we pan our study around the Kolkata metropolis and its twin city Howrah to take a stock of the wetlands. Urban wetlands are also important for water securities in cities, drainage, flood mitigation, and many provisioning cultural services. But these wetlands are often squandered by communities just for domestic activities, washing, dumping waste, and encroachment. However, there are wise use practices also, like the Washers project in Kalikapur. The local communities conserve urban ponds for getting pure drinking water through water ATM by a solar-run RO system. The refusal water is used in sanitation and household work. The pond also supports family farming in this slum.
মাঠের জল নিয়ে চাষ করি, মাঠের জল শুকিয়ে গেলে তখন আবার পুকুর থেকে নিই, পুকুর থেকে শুকিয়ে গেলে খাল থেকে নিই।
In peri-urban areas, poor communities wisely keep the wetlands. It sustains agriculture, fisheries, and other alternative livelihoods.
শোল মাছ, কই মাছ, মাগুর মাছ, শিং মাছ, ট্যাংরা মাছ, পুঁটি মাছ, মৌটি মাছ, ল্যাটা মাছ, এই মাছগুলো এনে বাজারে বিক্রি করা হয়। এই জলে বোরো চাষ হয়, এই চাষ হয়, মূলো চাষ হয়।
They understand the ecosystem values. They know that wetlands are for future. East Kolkata wetlands, a Ramsar site in peri-urban Kolkata, has supported wastewater fisheries for centuries. It alone produces 1,200 tons of fish and 800 tons of rice annually. Also, it provides 170 tons of table vegetables every day. Another clear wise use practice is the integration of aqua farming with horticulture. Vine farming on fish ponds are common in peri-urban Kolkata.
পুকুরে জল আছে, পাড়ে মাটি আছে, সেখানে কোনো গাছ টাছ লাগিয়ে আমরা পুকুরের জলটাকে নিয়ে সেই গাছের গোড়ায় দিয়ে আমরা চাষটাকে করছি। আমাদের এই অঞ্চলে আরও প্রচুর লোক এরকম পুকুরের ওপরে মাচা তৈরি করে, যেমন মাচার ওপরে লাউ কুমড়ো উঠছে, তারপরে এই যেমন বিন কড়াই এই সবগুলো যেমন করা হচ্ছে, তেমন মাছ চাষটা তো হচ্ছেই।
এই যে আপনি দেখছেন মাঠ ঘাট, এই খড়িবন, এই জলাভূমি, এই সব নিয়ে এখানকার মানুষ বেঁচে থাকে। খুব কম সংখ্যক মানুষ আছে তারা বাইরে কাজকর্ম করে। এখানকার কৃষিপ্রধান এই এলাকাগুলো, এখানকার মানুষ এই সবের ওপরেই নির্ভরশীল।
Wetlands are the natural habitats for many non-timber fibers. These fibers spare the forest and provide sustainable livelihood to the poor.
আমাদের এই হোগলার উপরেই নির্ভর করছে। আমরা নিয়ে এই ব্যান্ডেলকে দিয়ে দিচ্ছি একটা দোকানদারকে, দোকানদার নিয়ে ছই বুনতেছে, ছই বুনে তারা যাবজ্জীবন করতেছে।
Peri-urban families survive on these reeds and aquatic fibers by making handicrafts, ropes and sheets. All are wise usage and protect the ecosystem services of wetlands.
লরি করে বিভিন্ন রাজ্যে সবজি যায় আমাদের এখান থেকে, ওই হুংলা দিয়ে প্রচুর ওই গাঁটা ঘেরে দিয়ে মালটা যখন যায়, মালটা তাড়াতাড়ি শুকিয়েও যায় না। আর কোনো সময় বন্যা ফন্যা হলে সরকারি বাধা টেন্ডার দিয়ে আমাদের কাছে মালটা নিয়ে যেয়ে গরিব মানুষদের আশ্রয় দেওয়ার জন্য ক্যাম্প করে বাড়ির মতো করে দিয়ে ব্যবহার করতে পারে। নিমদিকে বাসি প্রায় 20-22 হাজার পরিবার আছে, তাদের সংসারটা এর উপরে নির্ভর করে চলে।
The city of Kolkata has lost half of its wetlands to urban encroachment in almost a decade. It is third in rank for flood risk. But how can these wetlands be saved? How can we revive the wetland services? South Asian Forum for Environment, SAFE, has propounded a neo-economic conservation model, the biorights of commons. It promises to compensate the poor for keeping the wetlands with payments from wetland ecosystem services.
Biorights is a new economic paradigm for conservation. This facilitates the developmental partnership between the beneficiaries as well as the stakeholders. When the beneficiaries or the community members participate in the process of conservation, there is some opportunity cost involved and that needs to be compensated. The biorights model tries to convert the payments from environmental services into a fiscal module that can help to compensate this type of an opportunity cost to the beneficiaries.
Winter is a lean economic period in the East Kolkata wetlands. There is no production of fishes, so the members of the cooperatives practice ecotourism. Revenue earned from ecotourism is used in paying microinsurance premium and the rest is equitably shared amongst members.
ধরুন আমি কাজ করতে করতে মারা গেলাম, এমনি মারা গেলে তো আমরা কিছুই পাবো না, সেক্ষেত্রে এই ইন্স্যুরেন্স থেকে বেনিফিট পাওয়া যায় এবং এর একটা পেব্যাক আছে।
This is how the biorights module creates a right-based conservation paradigm, which is a win-win situation between the stakeholders as well as the beneficiaries.
Wetlands are for us to ensure our livelihood, heritage and culture. It also saves us from ecological disasters like flood and drought.
Will have to be protected if it's to be sustainably used. And this is the message that we want to give all those people who are living around the wetland, that not only should they be using it, but they should use it wisely and they should also protect it.
Wetlands are the epitome of sustainability. By saving these wetlands, let us ensure a sustainable future.